Mr. Steiner, I appreciate you taking the time. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. What's going on today?
Excellent. I want to talk about your background a bit, where you're from, how you grew up. How did that shape your work ethic, your business acumen?
A big part of who you are is who raised you and where you grew up. And, in my case, those two are as relevant a statement as you can with my mom, who was just a fierce, fierce businesswoman back in the 60s and 70s, no question, taught me a ton. And really, my second book, You Gotta Have Balls, was everything my mother taught me that I really made a lot of money. I was one of those kids that actually listened to his mother. And I think like when you grow up in Brooklyn, especially back in the day, where it was a wide open, you went, nobody ever took you to school. You went to the Yankee game for hour and a half train ride, no adults, a bunch of 10-year-olds. We got on the train. That's how wide open it, and that's how much has changed. You can really, I look at myself as I got a degree from Syracuse. I got a degree growing up and living in Brooklyn, and I get another degree getting out of Brooklyn safely. So I mean, that's how important I think, when you grow up, especially in an urban, vibrant city. And these days, I don't know how hard and how difficult it is and what you get out of living in a complicated area like we did in Brooklyn, but I know it's extremely beneficial to me.
Does not coming from wealth help in business?
It could. I mean, it did for me, but I don't think so. I don't think it has to go that way. Like, I think my kids grew up with wealth and they're motivated, they're focused, they're highly educated. And we didn't bullshit our kids, like we told them, listen, I have a lot of money. I've been successful. Now I'm willing to share some of this with you, this little party that I'm having. You're invited always, but it's not yours. You have to decide how hard you want to work to decide what kind of party you want to have. But I do think that, the disadvantages that I had growing up, which I call disadvantages things that that a kid should have, which is clothing, food, a decent shelter. Those disadvantages can get you a little crazy. I always say I had heat in the summer and air conditioning in the winter, and grew up in a cockroach infested. Yeah, that could drive a kid crazy. The hunger, waking up hungry and not sure where you're going to get food from, can definitely add motivation. It certainly did for me. But it's not the only way. But I do think that my disadvantages have completely turned into my advantages. And I think having lived at such a really low level, or I call it poverty, and then having a pretty, high level of wealth is really just the irony of that. And it does enable you to really appreciate having that come from a lot. You do have a tendency to appreciate a lot more and definitely have a higher level of gratitude, which is such an important ingredient in success, to be grateful and to show gratitude and have gratitude on so many levels will help you get to extraordinary, to high levels of success. Where sometimes I think people that are born on third base think they hit a triple, and then they're not really understanding how hard it is, to get to third base, which is not easy. We never made it easy for our kids, regardless of the money we had. And I feel like they've earned their way and earning their way around, but they're just not going to experience what I did. And there's not much I could do about it.
When did you know that you had a knack for business, for marketing, things of that nature?
That's a great question. And I do think that, this kind of entrepreneurship and hunger could be taught. It could be developed in your mental mindset. You don't have to be born in a really poor house, or you don't have to be born in any kind of house. If you want to get a certain mindset, you can learn to have it. For me, now remember, I already been working a few years on the street. I was probably 13 or 14. And my mother asked me to give out. It's funny, I don't really have talked about this story, but it's true. I was like 13 or 14. My mother asked me to give out circulars underneath the train at the L, when people got off the train on Kings Highway in Brooklyn. And so I was standing in front of a beauty salon, which is a few blocks away, and I'm supposed to be giving out circulars where you get a special haircut, a wash and set at a special price. And my mother said, "Didn't I tell you to go underneath the L and give out circulars?" I said, "I am. I am doing that." She's like, "Well, if you were doing that, you wouldn't be standing in front of my salon. You'd be by the L." I said, "I got people. I got people working. And by the way, because, my mother didn't pay me a lot, but she gave me some money. I got 3 or 4 other stores to give me I create circulars for them. And I have 3 or 4 of my friends at every entrance giving out circulars for the salon, and for the couple other stores that we did. And I'm managing that because I'm 13 or 14. I'm managing that. She says, "Well, how are you paying? And how's that working?" I said, "Well, I went to a couple of friends that are really pretty wealthy, and I was able to cut a deal to buy a bunch of fireworks. So I'm not paying them in cash. I'm paying them in fireworks because their parents will let them work for money, and they don't really want that fireworks either. So I'm paying them in fireworks, and I'm just, charging the stores X amount, and then paying them Y amount of fireworks, but I'm making a certain vig on the fireworks, and I'm making money on all ends." And my mother said, "Oh boy, you are something else. Like this is," and when I say 13 or 14, which is like, you think about it on the street, and I've rallied my friends to work, but I already been out in the street 3 or 4 years. I started working when I was 10. So, I was comfortable. I was comfortable on the street, understood where the money was, understood how to make money already at that point. I think it's just critical. Like I tell people all the time, like you don't have to overthink it. Teaching your kid how to make $1 is such a valuable lesson. And it was something my mother continually showed me, how a dollar gets made, how a dollar gets spent. And you don't need to show kids tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars, because $1 turning into two is a huge lesson that I can't tell you how many kids come into my office to try to get an internship or a job and don't really even understand that concept.
Can business people ever work for somebody else, for a corporation, for a large company, or is it kind of something in your brain that refuses to do that?
Well, there was a study done by a guy that ran the New York Post that said, and again, this is his thinking, um, that if you are raised in a home, if you're raised in a home that where your parents are business owners, more than likely the kid's going to want to grow up and want to be a business owner, and they're not long for working for you. Listen, I worked a good amount of time. I didn't start my own business until I was 29, and my mother was dead set on me not starting my own business right away and really taking my time. So I was a good 8, 9 years out in the marketplace working for other companies before I decided to open up my own company. So, and I thought I was a pretty damn good employee. And also, even when I sold my company when I was 40, I did work for a company for 20 years and went through all the politics with not that much upside other than what I can, killing what I could eat and bonuses. And it was a pretty nice company, a $50 million company. But so, I mean, it depends. It depends how you look at it. I do think in this day and age, it's getting harder and harder to work for a bigger company. Um, Entrepreneurism is at its highest, believe it or not, which is surprising. Most people would think entrepreneurism is at its highest with younger people, but it's dominated by 55 to 65. And I think there's people that have just had it working for others, and they've got the expertise with a little money saved up. And those are the most successful entrepreneurs, is actually older people.
I want to talk about Steiner Sports a bit. How did you get into that? How did that come about?
I mean, it was luck. I mean, I was doing marketing. I was a restaurant guy, and I was doing marketing and PR for restaurants. And I kind of I started the sports bar theme. It was one of the first really active sports bars. Now we all see sports bars everywhere, but back then you rarely saw a restaurant with a TV in it. And I was just trying to book some players and market players, and then I was just trying to figure out a way to make some extra money. And that's how Steiner Collectibles came about, is me doing just hundreds of appearances. And then I decided to tag on some collectibles to it. It was just honestly luck that it became a brand, and it became actually something that was relevant to people, that especially sports fans. And it became relevant because I was doing so many appearances, working with so many athletes, hustling all over the place, that people knew that my stuff was real, it was authentic, and I was really solely connected to the players. So they were very active in buying my stuff, knowing that it was real. Because when I had opened it up, there was a lot of fraudulent problems. It's really that simple. It was definitely more of a money grab than it was some conceptual me following my purpose and passion. Although it moved to that, I saw the creative side of my brain with the money making part of my brain. It definitely hit the perfect cross section, and I mean, still to this day, the ideas I come up with are just outrageous, of what I think that people would want to collect. And I'm very grateful that a lot of people have enjoyed that vision, the stuff that I've created and started and been able to do, because I wouldn't be doing it this long without their cooperation and support, which, you can't ever take that for granted.
It's such a unique business. With that unique nature comes uncertainty, I guess. Answer. But how did you deal with that?
Well, it's funny you say that. I'm still learning to deal with it, only because there's so much unknown, particularly on the celebrity and player end. But, it's funny. One of the few classes I did well at college, there were a few, not many, but it was economics. And, it's such an important on the collectible end, which you're trying to create a market and analyze a market. And there's a lot of factors, and those economics classes taught me to look at those factors because not all cities are equal, not all brands of teams are equal, and you're trying to use all that data, regardless whether you have analytics or not. It's a gut, it's a feel that the people of Pittsburgh are not the same as the people in Minnesota, let alone the people in Miami, and all those markets have a different kind of passion and also a feel for how much they'll spend on this kind of stuff. So, I think the most important thing that was difficult, especially when I was creating really almost this industry, at least laying down the groundwork, is that how do you create enough product to fulfill the demand, just not enough? Because ultimately, when you're creating a collectible, you want to short the market. You want to make sure there's not enough. You don't want to have extra because you want people to have to go into the secondary market almost as soon as possible and start paying a premium, which will show and enhance the fact that what you bought has value. The company that's a genius at this on the highest level is Nike. They come out with a brand new pair of sneakers and short it. It's like one color, very limited. They're sold out almost as soon as they come out with it. And then they start hyping up a couple little small editions of those sneakers with really small editions, and those start going through the roof. And then about a month later, they start coming out with the same sneaker in a whole bunch of colors, and people are feeling that tension that they better go get this because they're going to be worth a lot. They're geniuses over there at Nike. They're one of the great collectible companies, and I follow them like religion, So it's a fascinating business because in every business you're trying to make as much as you possibly can and sell as much as you can. But with collectibles, it's like you're trying to make not enough. And that's a twisted mindset from a typical business standpoint. And the anxiety only comes from, the players because you can't control their performance. You're investing in them. It's up, it's down, it's stuff they're doing things you never thought they would do. And then there's the personal life where all of a sudden they're doing drugs or they're beating up their wife. And and then all of a sudden now they've done steroids and you're sitting with product that you've created. So you're really trying to find those kinds of things out, which I was really good at for a long time, like really studying quality of character, because I think that ultimately does play a role. You're going to go do a relatively big deal. You want to do something with a high quality. Maybe you can't control the winning, but you don't want to do it something with somebody who's really not a good person. And that's why I kind of got lucky with the Jeter factor, Eli Manning, Messier, some really high quality players.
Your business has been around for so many years. You've been through the internet age, the social media age. Now they're talking about artificial intelligence and all these other things. How much do you focus on how these things impact the way you market?
I mean, I try, it's, I think everybody's trying, but, I've always been on it. I don't ignore it. I think the important thing when new stuff is happening is to realize that everybody's figuring it out and not to avoid it. Listen, think about how long it took people to work their VCR, how to work their voicemail, how to work the remote. Now you're sitting with 5 remotes on your table and you're working like you're some TV technician. So I think when these things come out, especially, remember, older people are the ones that invented most of this stuff. Yet there's most of the older people don't know how to work most of this stuff. And it's because they lack of flexibility. I would say it's survival of the flexibility, not survival of the fittest. And this is where a lot of people are growing out of their careers. So many really brilliant, bright, older people that just don't have the patience to get into some of the digital stuff that's going on, the AI, all that stuff is very learnable. And it's amazing how many of my friends have grown out of business, how they just decide that they cannot be flexible and see that the world is now buying and doing business differently. But I think it's a great lesson for the young ones too, to realize that you too will deal with, serious change. I think the change that's occurred over the last 5, 6, 7 years is faster, more change than I've ever seen in my 64 years on the planet. But there's more change coming, and the only change you can guarantee, well, you really can't. The only thing I can guarantee is there will be change, and there will be. So I've been on the web, the internet, social media on early. Even though I'm an older person, I'm active on social. I've taken the time to learn about social and how it works, so that I'm still talking to my friends and people. And it's amazing how people just they talk about change, how important it is. It's amazing how many people just don't respect it and move with it.
What quality should every business person possess?
Well, for one, flexibility. Two, I think following up. Being a follow up. I mean, it's amazing how many games you don't get chosen into because you're just not a person that people feel they can rely on, or it takes just too long to get a hold of you. So just because you're working remotely doesn't give you the right to take your time and not be connected. You got to be more connected now than ever, or you got to have somebody helping you stay connected. So when people are reaching out, you can stay on track. And I think you got to be accountable. I think when you say you're going to do something, you got to do it. You got to keep your word, regardless whether it's in a contract or not. And the accountability is really the difference between, really, call it, women and girls, men and boys. It's accountability. It's like, if we talk about something and I'm asking you to do something, you agree to do it. Can I count on you to do it? And that's become a really, really, really wobbly characteristic. Keeping your word and doing what you say should not be a wobbly characteristic. It's the cornerstone of every great business person, frankly. And it's definitely the beginning of you becoming a real adult, is being accountable. So the faster that happens, like for me, it happened when I was 10. I'm not sure that that's a typical normal rate of process, but it needs to happen. And I think parents are the number one cause of this not happening. Is I always tell parents, you want to help your kids, stop helping them. That's how you can help your kids. Stop doing everything, making it easy for them, because it really takes away from the accountability. Ultimately, that, as any adult knows, it's just inevitable. You're gonna have to face some serious accountability. And the earlier on that you're accountable, the easier it is as you become an adult.
Have you seen that trend in the past several years and decades as perhaps a parenting flaw?
I do. I mean, look, our generation, the baby boomer generation, did very well. There's quite a bit of wealth. There's still a lot of poverty in this country too. But, and listen, we want it. We think we want it easier for our kids than we had it. We think we want to have it better for our kids. First of all, who said it was that bad? And second of all, the life you have is the life you have. Anybody who's thinking that the life should be one thing or another, the life that you want to have for your kids is the life that they earn and they build, and then you can help guide and consult with, not control, determine, predetermine. And I think the more, when I see parents go, I just want my kid to have a better life than I had, I'm like, oh God, really? I mean, I always listen. My kids don't want to hear my stories. They don't want to hear how poor I was, and I don't blame them. But I certainly don't want them to live the life that I think that they wanted to live, which is better than my life. Like, I want them to live the life that they have worked hard for, and the life that they decide that they deserve.
I wonder how much of that is a consequence of the times, right? In this country over the past several
Yeah.
years and decades, things have been relatively good. Things have been, by and large, growing in a positive way. And so, as they say, easy times make soft people, or some variation of that. Maybe that's part of it.
Maybe I don't know. I mean, I think part of that is just, I don't know about that. I think part of that is how you're parented, how you're raised, and how you educated, the mentors and influences you had on you. I've seen some really, really aggressive, phenomenal business people that grew up pretty wealthy, and I've seen a lot of phenomenal, particularly entrepreneurs that grew up incredibly poor. And there's a tendency to see that people that grew up incredibly poor, because of their circumstances, they push themselves a little harder. But it's all teachable. It's all mental mindset, whether you want to reprogram and get your brain going. ultimately to work its best, you do have a choice in the matter. I tell people all the time, like, it isn't about the corner office, it isn't about where you were born only. It's about what you decide you want to do. I always say it doesn't matter where you're at. It only matters what you're willing to accept. So you get to a certain point, if you're willing to accept making, 75,000 a year and living in a nice little apartment, and all right, nothing wrong with that. If that's what you want to accept. But realize the reason why you're in that circumstance is because you want to accept it, not because you have no other choices. And I've always had a high level of non-acceptance. When people ask my best characteristic, it's I'm tenacious, but I'm also creative. I'm accountable, and I have a high level of non-acceptance. High level, almost to a fault.
What's the hardest part of running a business?
The people. I mean, you would think it's the customers, the product, but it's the people. Like, especially in this day, there's such high expectations of what employees want, and also with the unemployment market low, there's a lot of leverage the employees have, and there's an expectation level of really working less and getting paid more. So, getting your people sold in on your vision and getting them to execute on your vision and making sure your people feel they're included, inclusiveness is any manager will tell you. We're battling with our own employees more than we're battling with our customers. I think the other thing is financing. Financing's got a little bit tricky. So obviously you want to take in a little more than you spend, and you got to be careful again not to grow out of business, because having enough money, even though you're making money, cash flow is huge. And if you got money out in the street in receivables or in inventory, having enough money to support growth is always tricky, because you're going to be partners either with a bank or investors. And so, it's great. You got a great idea and you're growing, but where you're going to get that growth money from is a big deal. And it's a good question that a lot of entrepreneurs don't have.
You did mention employees a second ago. What do you look for when hiring?
Simple. I look for curiosity and I look for enthusiasm. Curiosity and enthusiasm will take you to commitment most of the time. If somebody's not enthusiastic and they're not curious, asking questions, then they're tough to teach. Looking for employees that are faithful, available, and teachable. Teachable is so important, and they've got to be faithful. They've got to believe in the plan and believe in you that you can lead the way. And that's tough to find, especially curious and making sure you're available. Is just, I'm working from home. Like, I don't know. I don't know where all that comes from. I think that's going to get corrected. I don't see us in a 5-day work week in the office, but I could see most employers, pushing for the 3, possible 4-day work week, which is fine. I like that, a little more flexibility, but enthusiasm and curiosity is everything. It's very, very, very important ingredients, and those are 2 important ingredients that I look for. And it really is the guideline to whether you're going to be teachable and whether I'm going to be able to get you to really understand how this business really works.
What changes have you seen post COVID in terms of the environment at work, business structure in general?
Well, credit is impossible. Collecting money is just impossible. I don't know why. It's definitely a shortage of accounting people. It's not a sexy area that people want to go into. I think our police department is, I'm really, really nervous about what we've now done to our police department between COVID and between Black Lives Matters. It's just not sexy to be a police officer. So security has become a huge issue. Every police department that I've talked to, they're down 20-25%, difficult to recruit, and then half their staff can't wait to get out the door. And I bring it up because it has an effect on retail. People are not booming to open up more retail stores because of theft and because of other security reasons. So that it takes its toll in many ways. I think supply process was really bad, and now it's kind of worked itself out, but everything's more expensive. So things got more expensive because of COVID. And then now there's no more COVID, but they still hold on to a lot of the increased prices. And then we're all facing higher costs on just about everything we're buying. And it definitely takes its toll when you're selling to, lower middle income people. And I think also, hard to hire people. A lot of people don't want to go to the office every day, and you have a bunch of people that don't want to work. There's staggering numbers of people that are home that can work that won't work, or unemployment rate's low, and then you've got a bunch of people that are dictating that what they will and won't do. And then the last thing I'll say is I just went on a rant about this, but I mean, customer service is like just a complete lost art. I mean, we stopped doing one of the most fundamental things that we should all be doing in business, which is serving, taking care of people. I mean, that's what business is about, not just filling your pockets, but it's about taking care of people, adding value. Value is what you can do for someone they can't do for themselves. So, serving people and taking care of people is huge. And you go to restaurants, you go to stores, and nobody wants to take care of you. Everything's self-checkout. By the way, can you show me where this is? And they give you like a blank look. I'm sure they're going through their own pains of trying to hire people, but going into a place and getting good service is a pure rarity. It's a lost art, and it's a shame. Those are the main things. I'm very externally distracted, which is what I think makes me a good entrepreneur. Is I try to pay attention to everything, even though most of it has nothing to do with me, because all the grains of sand kind of equals the beach, and you always want to try to get a feel for what's going on. And I'm looking for the white space, I'm looking for like what's needed, and that's why I'm always showing a lot of empathy and compassion of what's going on around me, which enables me to see what other people are thinking and feeling, and then I can see the white space. Maybe it's something I could deliver based on that.
How do you stay hungry after all these years?
It's a good question, but I think it's, you got to trick yourself. For me, obviously I've never worked. Well, I shouldn't say never. I would say that it's now been a good 25, 30 years now where I haven't worked for money. So people always say to me, Brandon, you could retire. I could have retired at 40, I'm 64, but I've never really worked for money. You gotta want to teach more than being a teacher. You gotta want to help people feel better more than being a doctor. You gotta want to really come up with cool collectibles and kind of fulfill people's dreams by meeting an athlete or getting really cool collectibles more than being a sports marketer or a collectible guy. Like, so for me, that hunger comes from the excitement of doing what I do, not necessarily based on the financial win, which generally, if you do a good job, you're going to have those financial wins. I think the big problem is not how I stay hungry, because that's, when you grow up hungry, and also you trick your mind into making sure that, hey, my mindset is, Brandon, nobody thinks you can still do it. I don't know if they're still going to buy anything anymore, but in my soul, I know that I'm pretty damn good at this. So I have my soul and my mindset kind of meet up together to keep me in somewhat of a stable, but the underdog role. The real question really is, it's not about how do you stay hungry, but how do you unwind out of having, when you're trying to create an extraordinary career and be really great at something, how do you unwind out of it? And we see a lot of our top athletes struggle to do it, because you put such an emphasis and energy and commitment towards being great. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, you don't have to be great anymore. And, it's difficult. And, I have a lot of friends that are incredibly what they do. And we're all looking at each other like, I don't know how to unwind out of this and maybe do something else. I'm so good at this and used to this. So it's a good question. And it's a pretty significant problem. I talk a lot about in my third book, Living on Purpose. If you have an adult or a friend that's over 40, you go to my website, pick up that book in a heartbeat, because it's written for those people exactly.
What is it about our culture that idolizes athletes, puts them on a pedestal?
It's just such a unique talent, a unique level of competition that most of us can't do. It's like we all have our fantasies about different careers and stuff that we could do. A lot of it because we just love what that career brings and does. But with athletes, most of us know that we can't do that. So it makes them puts them in a special category. I think it's probably blown up out of proportion, frankly. I mean, we should be feeling that way about our doctors and our teachers and emergency workers. And those are the ones that we really need to get behind and pay a lot more and tribute more, particularly our teachers. Don't get me started. But, the athletes, they're unique. And also, it's easy to become a fan of them. It's almost a little religion-like. It's something you can believe in. And it doesn't give you much pushback other than a win and a loss. So that's kind of what sports does. It gives you that relief. It gives you that break. Gives you something to believe in that isn't going to give you any controversy, especially these days. You know, you need that. It gives you that little break. So, and then you get kind of emotionally caught up in it all. Having seen all the ups and downs for quite some time, right up close and personal, um, there's some relevance to it. And like I said, maybe we're overdoing it a little bit with some of the talent, and we should be paying attention more to some other levels of really extraordinary people.
I'll get you out on this. If a young person comes to you asking advice about business, starting their own business, making their mark in business, what would you tell them?
Tell them, first of all, go work for someone else and go learn how business gets done on someone else's roof. And don't just work for any company, work for a company that's going to actually grow you. You know, the most important thing I tell young people is, you know, are you a rose? What's your rate of growth, rate of self effectiveness? And a lot of young people jump the gun and want to do their own thing way too early, and they're not equipped. You hear the stories about some people that actually make it, but they're very, very few, and they're extraordinary stories. But most don't make it because they don't have the experience or enough of the right people around them. So I tell people, take your time. Take your time. No rush. You know, take your time. Learn about the accounting, the finance, all the non-sexy things. Doesn't mean you have to be great at it, but understand how it all gets put together. Um, and listen, the ground rules and the fundamental stuff of business is part of it is an experience game, and part of it is just is having somebody, maybe the right people, teach you. And if you bypass it, you could be at a significant shortage when something really the right thing happens. You won't be prepared. It'd be kind of like jumping into a basketball game without ever really learn how to dribble or how to play defense properly, or you know, you would be fully equipped, but you could jump out of the gym. We've seen so many players jump out of the gym, do all kinds of amazing things, and then they can't play defense, or they're not really good passers. You want to learn how to be a great basketball player, like spend an enormous amount of time when you're younger on fundamentals, and then let your God-given talent see how far it's going to take you. It's the same thing with business. Like, take the time to learn the fundamental stuff, even though it's not sexy, and even though it's grueling. Learning about finance, learning about accounting, learning about personnel, hiring, firing. It's not sexy, but it's a much a part about the business as any.
Mr. Steiner, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.